Hello, you horrible, hideous, disgusting lot of the internet. And hello to the good ones as well. Welcome back to episode number 8 of the Lifestyle Lab. And if you are watching this on video, you'll be noticing a slightly different backdrop to usual. And I am here in my living room, a lot more relaxed and a lot more. I say a lot more relaxed. I'm pretty chilled out anyway, but a lot more kind of a lot more of the setting and a lot more of the vibe that I'm wanting to bring to the podcast. If you watched episode 1, you will know that the aim for the podcast for me is to bring a little bit more of a laid back feel to it, a little bit more of an open book feel to it, and to kind of cut through the fast paced pew 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 of Instagram and social media, and bring you a little bit more of an open and honest approach to not just fat loss and weight loss, which is obviously predominantly the people that I help or what I help with, but mindset, lifestyle, and some experiences that kind of go along with that. So yeah, if you're watching this on video, do people still call it video? If you're watching this on recordings, if you're watching it on MP4, then you will see the backdrop is my living room. My leg is up on the couch. I'm relaxed. I'm ready to go, and we have an absolute doozy for you today, people. And I am going to talk about how I nearly gave up coaching. And for those of you who do follow me on social media and have worked with me, and even better, got a result with me, will know that that sounds almost kind of crazy because yeah, there's never been anything else that I want to do other than to help people. I was trying to think. I was trying to think of some fancy thing to say that other than help people lose weight and manage that long term, but just I mean literally in the broadest of spectrum, help people as much as I possibly can. Not even just with their fat loss, but their mindset, their lifestyle, their mental health. I want to help people live a far more fulfilling life than maybe they perhaps ever thought that they could, but deep down have always wanted to, and I want to help. I've always wanted to help people kind of unlock that, and I think for me to kind of get to the point where I nearly gave up coaching, I will have to give you guys a little bit more of a backdrop, a little bit more context as to kind of how we got there in the first place. And if you've listened to episode 1, I think maybe I touched on this a little bit in episode 2 as well. You'll kind of know. I think I rattled off. Well, I did. I rattled off 15 facts about me. And obviously, if you've worked with me, I'm a pretty open book as well. If you've known me for, I'm 32 now. I was 32 on Saturday. Happy birthday to me! If you want to leave that in the comments. But I'm 32 now, and if you've known me for kind of any length of time, you will know that everything that I've always done has always been geared around wanting to help people. And I think, like I said, to kind of get to the point where I was contemplating giving up coaching, I'll go back to the start and give you guys a little bit more context to that. And obviously, what I'm going to want to do as well is, because I want the podcast to be as educational as possible, whilst being as open and honest as possible, I will try to, obviously, when I'm sharing my experience, try to tie that in with something that I think you guys will be able to relate to, if not the experience and the feelings of that experience, but how you can then apply what I learned along the way to your fat loss and weight loss goal, to your fitness goals, to your health and things like that. Because it's not been it's not been easy. It's actually been very very fucking difficult, very very hard. Um, But yeah, like I said, we'll start at the beginning. So obviously, with me, kind of just it also kind of brings about an anniversary for me, as it were, and it is my 9 year anniversary in business. Happy birthday to TFG. Happy birthday to the Fitness Guru. It's my 9 year anniversary as a PT and coach, and my fucking god, has it has it flown by? They do say that life gets faster as you get older, and I've always said that as I've got older, life has got better. It has got a lot more challenging, and a lot more challenging than I think I ever thought it would. But I absolutely, I genuinely love life, and I genuinely love what I have done with my life. I genuinely love what I do. It gives me purpose. It gives me soul. It gives me energy. Honestly, it gives me everything. And genuinely, as I have gotten older, life has gotten better. The challenges have become harder. They've become bigger. But with every experience I've had before that, I've never been more equipped to be able to take them on. And I suppose that's kind of why I'm still here, because as easy as it would have been for me to give up on this ambition and this dream of mine, um, I just don't see, or just haven't seen, what else I could do other than help people. So yeah, 9 years is how long I've been in this for, and I've made a lot of mistakes, both personally and from a business perspective, which I will get into as well. I do have some notes here because I do have a a very awful tendency of just rambling on for the longest time about one single point. So yeah, there are some things that I do want to talk about specifically. So I have made some notes, but yeah, kind of going back again, I've said that everything I've always ever done, or everything I've always ever wanted to do, has been revolved around helping people. Like I do, I literally remember being in. I remember being in primary three, where we were talking about kind of things we'd like to be when we grow up. Now, for anyone in England, or even anyone overseas who's maybe perhaps listening to this in Scotland, in primary three, you are going on eight. So as early as eight, this was my thought process, and that I was going to help people in some capacity, and more specifically, in primary three, I wanted to be a doctor, and I remember kind of when we were talking about this, my teacher at the time being like really proud of me that I wanted to be a doctor, because I think when you think about being a doctor, you think of them as like the superheroes of society. You think of them as being the ones who, because of the skill set they have, actually being able to physically do something and physically change something about someone's life, that gives them either a new lease of life, or makes what was a very hard time for them so much easier. And that was always my ambition. And then it kind of didn't take too much. It didn't take too much longer after that. Kind of as I went through primary school, I was good in primary school. In that academically, I was okay, but I think in primary school, everyone just about is, until until I got to high school. But again, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of an idea as to what sort of expectations I had for my life, and wanting to help people and things like that. I had a playground assistant in primary seven who was actually relatively new to the school at the time. She'd only been there a year. Right on my shirt before I went up to high school, "Remember me when you're famous." And I remember, my mum, who went to get a spooky reading. For anyone who doesn't know, a psychic medium, or or a witch, as it were, if you want to kind of call it that as well, going to get a reading done when I was young, and she had said essentially that she can see me speaking in front of hundreds of people. Now, by no means was I ever thinking growing up that I was ever going to become famous or I was going to speak in front of thousands and thousands of people. But there was always a part of me that hoped that I would. You know, I think when you're growing up, you are thinking, like, maybe if you're involved in sports or things like that, you're always thinking about being famous. I'd played in a band as a drummer as well as a young boy, and you think about the limelight, you think about the being famous, you think about playing in front of thousands of people, you think about being at the very very top, and throughout my childhood there were a lot of there were a lot of moments like that where I was singled out or I maybe made an example of that, you know, with all this potential, Sam, if you really apply yourself, you can be anything in life, and you can do this and you can do that. And obviously, with me just being a kid, I'm just like, oh my god, yes, that sounds amazing. That sounds absolutely fantastic. And then kind of combining that with my want and desire to kind of always help people, I was like, God, this sounds amazing. I'm going to be the face of humanity and pushing it forward and helping it be better and all these sorts of things. Like I had these visions of grandeur, and even kind of still as a 32-year-old man, I still think like that. I still dream big, and I still am very very passionate about all of that. It's why 9 years later I'm still in a position where where I can help people, and I'm deeply deeply passionate about that, and I love it. And when you're kind of in and around when you're kind of in and around the TFG team, and you've learned what it is that I've learned, and you've gone through what it is that I've gone through, and you come out the other side not unscathed, because it leaves you with experience, and it leaves you with memories of that, but you do genuinely feel like you can do anything. And whilst that's never it's not always clear, because I have bad days and things have been very very tough, and again we'll go into it in a little bit more detail, but yeah, when you're in and around that, there's you don't think any other way. You're always thinking to the future, you're always getting ambitious, you're always getting hyped, you're always getting excited. The energy is, for the most part, always quite high. And I say always quite high because it's not always. Again, like I said, I'm a human being. I've gone through shit. Um, I've gone through shit. Will go through shit. But as of today, for the most part, 75% of me. Well, I say 75%. That's a total fucking lie. Just lied to you. I'd say 90% of my days, I'm ambitious, I'm passionate, I'm forward thinking. I want more. I'm driving for more. I want more for the team. I want more for me. I want to keep going. I don't want to stop ever. So the fact that there was a thought that crossed my mind one day where I was thinking, am I delusional here? Am I a bit yeah, am I a bit delusional? Am I thinking too far ahead? Am I maybe I'm not capable of this? Um you combine that with the fact that when I was younger, not expectations, but I was being told these things about my mum's psychic medium, like playground assistant saying, "Remember me when you're famous." I remember in primary school when a new kid came into class. I'll not name his name, but I do remember his name. His first name was Connor. This was in primary 5, I believe it was. My teacher was Miss Kell, and she partnered me with Connor on his first day. And I remember asking her why, because I was always a curious kid. I was always inquisitive. I always wanted to know things. I asked her why she partnered him with me, and she said she essentially said, because I can't think of him being better partnered with anyone else. Um, and that was in a class of 28, 25 kids. So I remember little things like that. And obviously we'll take into consideration some discrepancies in the fact that I was a kid. But I remember whilst it may not have exactly happened like that, I remember the emotions of that memory. So there were always people who believed in me. There were always people who knew what I was capable of doing and who seen that potential. And I've ridden that train for the last 9 years, and I think because 95% of new business startups actually fail, and they fail inside their first 18 months. So for me to still be sitting here 9 years later, and for anyone who's kind of listening to this who's started a business and still there even 3, 5, 10, 15 years later, like fucking credit to you, because 95% of startups fail, and it has just been pure passion that has driven me driven me up until this point. Um, so obviously we kind of get to high school, and then academically, I realised that do need to be a little bit switched on to be a doctor. Believe it or not, it's not just anyone that becomes a doctor. It's generally the most academically aware of us and the most academically applied of us. And I was quickly discovering I was not one of those people, and it had me kind of scrambling somewhat. Sorry, the video. If you video people, MP4 people watching this, will see that I'm being attacked by a bush right now. I'm being attacked by a plant. Um, I digress. Yes, in wanting to be a doctor, my mind or my head was kind of not scrambling. I had loads of time. I was in second, third year at this point. Um, and I kind of knew, even kind of early years in high school, being a doctor was kind of not less what I wanted to do, but I was kind of exploring other options. My my dad was a Royal Marine. My granddad, he was in the RAF. His brother was in the RAF. My family were military people, and that's kind of where my focus started to shift. And even kind of in the early years, me and a mate would dress up and play soldiers and all that sort of stuff. It was always kind of in the peripheral. It was always sort of in the background. So that's kind of where my focus started to shift. And as kind of high school went on, I was hopeless in high school. And for anyone who's kind of listening to this, who was with me at high school, you will know that in sixth year, I was doing one higher, and it was, of course, PE. I nearly said PT there. I am a PT. It was PE, physical education, and I was doing it for my second year. So I'd already done it in fifth year, and I think for the most part, I think if it were anyone else, they'd probably been asked to go to college or maybe try an apprenticeship or something like that. But I never actually got asked to leave school or encouraged to do that. And I actually think it was because I was quite well liked. I wasn't a badly behaved boy. I was just a little bit lost, but just a little bit unsure of where or what he was going to do next. And it was funny. It was funny at the time that in sixth year I was doing one higher that I'd already done in fifth year. So if that didn't kind of hammer home how academically unaware I was, or how academically um, lackluster I was, let that emphasize that point. I was absolutely hopeless when it came to education, and education specifically at school. Um, but again, I was never sort of asked to leave. I was never asked to go and do anything else, and I'm thankful, because I wouldn't say I enjoyed school, but I liked being in school. I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of people I could speak to. Um, there was never really a real stress with school, apart from one time, because obviously the Royal Marines was kind of starting to gather pace. I always wanted to be doing. I, academically aware or not, I always wanted to be doing my best, and to be an officer in the Royal Marines, you had to be relatively academically aware. So because the Marines was sort of gathering pace, um, and I always wanted to do my best. uh, An education was required in order for me to be an officer in the Royal Marines, but obviously I wasn't academically switched on. I wasn't applying myself. I wasn't applying myself the way that I wanted to. So essentially, what I had was this conflict where, yeah, I wanted to be an officer and be the best I could possibly be in the Royal Marines, but also realised that I had to be this person academically that I knew that I wasn't. And those two sort of, that's, if you can hear that, that's me smashing my hands together, butting heads basically, um, between those two people, and that caused me a lot of stress. That caused me a lot of anxiety because I didn't I didn't fit into that mold. And as a young person at school, you do feel like school is the be all and end all, and that is very much how I felt. And to kind of piggyback on that, always wanting to be the best that I could possibly be, that was kind of the it was kind of the tale of my life up until that point as well, because I was always very heavily involved in sports, whether it be football teams, boxing. I played rugby for a little bit. Uh, When it came to the athletics, I'd won the second year athletics. Um, in primary school, I was always, I mean, even in high school, early adulthood, I was always very fast. So I was always in like the sprints and relays and all that sort of stuff. And I was always very good at them. And I was always very competitive. So I had this competitive edge, who always wanted to be doing his absolute best. And then you marry that with the fact that I was actually having to try and be academically someone that I wasn't, caused me a lot of stress, caused me a lot of anxiety, and probably kind of where I started to develop a lot of my depressive spells. And that can be something that I can kind of start to go into a little bit more depth about, because for those of you who are maybe listening to this, if you're brand new to this, I will go into it. But for those of you who've known me for a while, will know that I've suffered from depression, and I've suffered from depression for quite a long time, from as early as 16 years old, but being clinically diagnosed with depression at the age of 21. And a lot of my, and I know this now as an adult, having had the time to sit with it and go to therapy and attend groups and openly speak about this even on social media, to give myself the opportunity to better understand myself, that a lot of my depressive bouts were as a result of those expectations that I'd had of myself and where my life, or where I had seen it going, and it not really matching with the reality of where I currently was at that moment in time. So again, what I had is I had that clash of, again, my lifestyle and the reality of my situation and where it was and where I thought it should be based on, again, not those expectations of when I was younger, but some of those thought processes I had of vision of grandeur and being famous, and the fuel that had been added to sort of those thought processes. And then what you had is, again, the reality of me in the middle of those two things, feeling very fucking depressed, feeling very stressed, feeling very anxious, feeling very suicidal at one point as well. And that was, yeah, that was a very fucking tough time. And that's something that I spoke kind of openly on Instagram. I believe the upload that I put up during COVID is still there. That was a very sort of very dark time for me. It affected a lot of friendships, it affected a lot of relationships, it affected a lot of opportunities. And I obviously still am a very young man, but being a younger man at that time was still sussing a lot of these things out. And yeah, that's kind of where I was at in sort of my teens, early adulthood. So then I leave school. I actually do go to college. It was pretty nondescript again. Met a lot of great people. Sorry for anyone who went to college with me who's listened to this, who's just heard me describe my college experience as pretty nondescript. It's not that it wasn't nondescript, it was just kind of more of the same. So I do apologize to those people, but yeah, it was kind of more of the same. It was kind of more of me, as I think every young person goes through, but maybe doesn't necessarily openly talk about. I'm just finding out who I am, really. I'm just finding out what I offer. I'm just finding out what I bring to the world and what I bring to people. But again, always with the purpose of trying to help people, because people will probably hear the fact that I want to join the Royal Marines and go, well, how does that affect other people? How is that you putting other people first? And to be honest, I now kind of think of that, regardless of what your opinions are of joining the forces. It's a great question to ask, but I guess I kind of, again, because I always wanted to be a doctor, I always wanted to help people. I'd always sort of thought about fame and fortune and superheroes and all these sorts of things. I always thought by joining the military and being a soldier that I would go into war torn countries and help free people and help them and do the humanitarian thing and all that sort of stuff. And again, these were kind of, rightly or wrongly, these were kind of all the thoughts and processes going through my mind at that time. And when it came to the Royal Marines, it was again on the back of wanting to be a doctor. It was something that I wanted to do for quite a long time, until one day, actually playing football, I had badly, like seriously, worst injury I'd ever had. Torn the ligaments in my ankle, and it I, it put the God, it sounded like I was bloody choking there. it put it obviously stalled the process, but it stalled my application of joining the Royal Marines. And I remember the careers advisor phoning me. This about 6 months had passed, because again the injury was that bad. It took me quite a bit of time to get back running, get back moving. It still kind of wasn't right. In hindsight, it probably should have actually really gone. Should have gone to A&E. Should have followed it up. Maybe actually got surgery. But as someone who kind of hadn't really ever been injured before, I just thought I'd walk it off, as it were. Get the magic sponge on it for for anyone who's played a sport before. Get a magic sponge on it. But I didn't. And kind of 6 months had passed. I was working at this time. I was no longer at college. I was working at this time. I actually worked in a cinema. I worked in the Odeon, and yeah, I was bringing money in. But again, I knew, with the vision that I had and all these sorts of expectations and things like that, that the long term, the Odeon wasn't for me. The cinema wasn't for me. And I remember the careers advisor actually phoning me from from the the military services office, saying, "Hey Sam, just following up with your application. How's the injury? Is this something that you still want to do?" And I remember it because I was actually sitting on my bed. I was sitting on my bed in my mum and dad's house, and I just turned around. I just turned around and said to him, "No, no, this isn't something that I want to do anymore." And that was probably the first time since. Well, at that time I would have been about. I think I would have been about 22. So in high school, kind of if near the start of high school, I knew that I wasn't kind of going to be a doctor anymore. That was probably about the first time in 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, maybe 10 years, probably more likely, where I'd actually said, no, I'm not going to be a Royal Marine. And it was sort of the first time in that process where I'd actually thought about not being a Royal Marine. And that when I was saying no to him about being a Royal Marine and withdrawing my application, it was the first time I'd thought of that. So he obviously wished me the best, asked me if I was sure. And I said, and at that time, yeah, I was pretty sure. And as a 32-year-old right now, it's never been something I regret. Never regretted it. Never regretted saying no to the Royal Marines. And with it having been something that I wanted to do for 10 years, I wanted to be a Royal Marine for longer than I'd been a personal trainer and a coach. Which is absolutely outrageous. It's absolutely mental. It's absolutely mental. But yeah, I wanted to be a Royal Marine for longer than I have been a PT and a coach, and it was kind of scary. But obviously, I I had the cinema. I was working at the cinema. I was earning. I was a young man. I still hadn't really sort of sussed anything out. Wasn't going to uni. Wasn't going to college because I think everyone in their dog bloody went to uni. It wasn't me. Wasn't doing that. Never had a plan. But I guess I was doing the best that I could in the situation that I was in, which was always kind of what I wanted to do in life, was always be doing my best in any situation. And at that time, earning money was the best that I could do. So working at the cinema was absolutely fine. And then an opportunity came up to be a team leader at the cinema. And again, with me kind of always wanting to be doing the best that I could possibly do in any given situation, that was a good situation for me. And I applied, and I actually got it. So whenever I've sort of set my mind to things, haven't always achieved what it is that I've set my mind out to be, but I've always put my best foot forward. And I think for anyone sort of listening to this, whether it's for weight loss, for mindset, for fat loss, for building muscle, for whatever it is that you're looking to improve within your life, if you're always putting your best foot forward, I know you always put yourself in the best position possible to do well. And I always kind of liken it to that analogy that gets used. Maybe you've heard it before, but it's if you aim for the moon and miss, at least you'll land amongst the stars, which is still a very beautiful place to be, which is still a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Which is still a very positive place to be, which is still a very successful place to be, because the alternative was that you didn't shoot at all. And that's kind of always been my mantra, my motto in life. If you're always kind of stepping with your best foot forward, you'll either get the result that you want, get to where you want to be, or you'll certainly become a better person for doing it. So yeah, I became a team leader at the cinema. Again, still very much earning. But I suppose mentally, uh, I had I had attended therapy at this point. I had been on medication and stuff like that, but I suppose, and I guess with that experience, I had learned mentally how to better manage my mental health, my emotions, and things like that. But as a as a 22, 23, 24 year old guy, as a young person, I'm still figuring my way out of things, and I don't want to use that as an excuse, because I let down a lot of people along the way, and I think about that to this day still, and I feel really guilty about a lot of that. So again, I don't ever want to make excuses, but I was still figuring a lot of things out, and a conversation comes around with a friend, Lee. If he's listening to this, he probably won't listen to this. But Lee Benedictus, his name is. So if anyone's listening to this, you can let him know that I shouted him out on my podcast. Still speak to Lee to this day, anyway. But him and me were having a conversation about how he thought that I should become a personal trainer, and it wasn't really something that I'd given much thought to. And I asked him why he thought that, and he's like, "You've always been the fittest in the friends group," which was true. And he said, "You've always been really good with people." And so off the back, because him and Lee and me have spoke about this since. So off the back of that conversation, it was something that I got interested in. It started together, sort of arms and legs, because I was always sort of the fittest in the friends group because of how often I played sport. I started going to the gym when I was 15, probably the first amongst my friends group to actually do that. I was always sort of very sporty. So I went and explored those options, and my God, for any PTs and coaches listening to this, to get your qualification for a PT is fucking expensive. Like, it's very, very expensive. And when I read it, it it was just something I couldn't afford. It was something I couldn't manage. And so the dust kind of settled on it a little bit, but as time went on, as I started to think about it a little bit more, it was something that I was getting a little bit more, something I was getting a little bit more excited about because it aligned, being a personal trainer and being a coach aligned with everything that I wanted to be in life. Number one, I got to help people, and two, I got to I got to exercise and train and show people how to do that effectively, and with sort of the competitive side of things when it came to sport and me, within my nature almost being a character trait at this point, it almost kind of was sort of, it was almost sort of perfect, to be fair. So I was getting excited about it, and so I spoke about it with my mum and dad, who I was still living with at this time, and they agreed that they would pay for it for me, which my mum and dad, shout out, are two of the most amazing people I say I have ever met. They're my parents. They gave birth to me. Well, my mum did. Weird story if my dad did, but anyway, yeah, my mum and dad, two of the greatest people ever in the world, and we're always part of that collection of people who said, Sam, so much potential. You apply yourself. You could be anything you want to be. And thankfully, when I spoke to them about this, it was something that they said that they would do for me on the condition that I would pay them back every month. And so that was something that was agreed, and something that has been settled for a long, long time. So I go I go and do my PT course. I decide that I'm going to do the fast track option, because when you train to become a PT, there there was at the time, so obviously this was 9 years ago, there was three options. There was the online learning, which is entirely your responsibility, and you submit things, get them cleared, stuff like that. There's the blended learning, where it's predominantly online, but I think for one weekend a month you go and get taught one-to-one on stuff. Or there's the fast track method, which is all one-to-one. And so obviously, with me describing my experience at school, with me knowing exactly the type of learner that I am, unless I am sitting in front of someone who is feeding me the information, literally feeding me the information, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to sit and do it on my own. I'm not going to blended learn. I'm not going to online learn by any means. So I knew that I needed to do the fast track option, which of course was the fucking most expensive one. But I knew, based on who I was as a learner, I needed to do that. So I moved to Edinburgh for 6 weeks. Still worked at the cinema at the weekend, but moved through Edinburgh during the week. Came back on a Friday night, and it was great. I can't believe it was 6 weeks. Like, when we think about 6 weeks and how quickly, like, for example, that's us at the end of January now, and I still, like, Christmas felt as if it was yesterday. Although some people feel like January is the longest month in the world, and I can see why they would think that. But when your life's as brilliant as mine, it's just every month's the same. But yeah, it was 6 weeks, 6 weeks on this PT course, and it was such an amazing experience, such a great group of people. There was about 25 of us. There was about 30 at the start. Obviously, some people weaned off, left, etc., etc. Um, Such a great group of people. Andy, Ewan, Alan, like the four of us, specifically James as well. The five of us specifically were probably, like, a friends group. Like if you're listening to this, be sure to say hello. You've got the shout out as well. But yeah, we were a great group of mates. Um, and so yeah, that was a really fun experience. And I remember again, just kind of to sort of allude to that sort of expectation things, and me remembering the medium and playground assistant, etc. We had like an awards day. We had like a dedicated time at the end of the course where we got some like munchies into the class and all that sort of stuff. We were just essentially tying the bow, getting people over the line when it came to stuff that they had to fill out, submit, and all that sort of stuff. So we had like an awards um, thing, and the I actually got an award, and it was they got Jenna, her name was, who was the course tutor. She asked people in the class to vote who they thought would be the most successful, and the class voted me. They voted me, and I still have the post-it. I still have the sticky label. It's upstairs on my notice board. I will, for anyone who wants to see it, I will send you a picture of it. It's there, and they voted me most likely to be successful, which at that moment in time when they did that was just the most incredible thing to feel, but also very much aligned with what I was thinking, how I'd always thought, how I'd always moved with wanting to put my best foot forward always, and commit myself to things, and be the best that I possibly could. So to receive something like that was nice. It was really nice. It was almost kind of confirmation of my thinking, and yeah, they voted me most likely to be successful, and I cherish that. I cherish that moment. I cherish every one of those moments that I've had. Um, and so we qualify on that day as well. Everyone kind of gets over the line. We're all giving each other massive hugs, saying like, "Let's keep in touch." Um, but you know what those things are like when you say we'll keep in touch. Like you spend so much time with these people inside that 6 weeks. You don't see your life kind of unfolding without them at that point. But time passes by. You see each other less. You speak less, etc., etc. Before they just feel like strangers again. And that's life. That's not me kind of getting too sentimental about anything. But I still follow them on Instagram. I think I dropped you in just a message the other week wishing them a happy birthday. So yeah, we still kind of see what each other are doing on social media and stuff like that. So we give each other the hug, say goodbye, etc., etc. And I already have at this point. I already have my first job lined up, my first PT position, and it was at David Lloyd. And my experience at David Lloyd is definitely a mixed bag. Of course, it was my first. Sorry, I'm just rearranging myself. For those on the video, you will see that. For those just listening, I'm getting comfortable, getting a lot more relaxed. Yeah, my David Lloyd experience is very much a mixed one, but it's my very first PT position, and one I'm very, very thankful to have had the opportunity to do. So when I essentially first started at David Lloyd, I agreed to two 6 a.m. starts in the morning. I'd also agreed to take on two of the other PTs 6 a.m. starts as well. So that was 4 6 a.m. starts a week I was doing, which was absolutely wild. Because, well, I would have qualified when I was 24. And 24? 23. 23 going on 24. So to get up at 6 a.m. was just, no. It just wasn't something that I'd ever done. Well, I say get up at 6 a.m. I started at 6 a.m. So I was up at about 5:30 because David Lloyd was just down the road from me. And I remember this, I'd only just started drinking coffee a couple of weeks before that during the course. So it's fair to say that Coffee and me became very, very good friends when I started my job as a PT, when I started my job as a coach. And again, because I was wanting to get a foothold in this business, I was wanting to kind of make the most of it and stuff like that. I took on those 6 a.m. shifts, and they were great. They were really good. I loved being in the gym. I loved kind of being around people and stuff like that. But I'll admit my first my first couple of months being a PT was tough because I was working these 4 6 a.m. shifts, but I was still working at the cinema as well. So I was committing a lot of time for not much reward, shall we say. Where I was still earning a bit of money. Thankfully, I was still kind of living at home with my mum and dad. So in terms of outgoings, there wasn't much going on, and I think that's quite important to the longevity that I've had the within coaching, as well as because from a foundational level, from when I first started out, I had a lot of things that aligned for me, and that, like I said, I never had any sort of major financial outgoings. I still had a job that was very, very flexible in terms of times that I could work and stuff like that. I just had to make sure that for it to work, I was committing as much of my time to actually growing the business as I possibly could. But it was tough. The first few months as a PT and the coach were tough because it actually took me 3 months to get my first clients, shall we say. Um, it took me 3 months, and at the time, I kind of didn't really. I didn't really have sort of anyone else to kind of compare myself to. There were other PTs there, but some of them were quite a bit older than me. I was a young man working in what was predominantly a gym for a slightly older age group, shall we say. I think it's safe to say that David Lloyd caters more towards older people, retired people, and families. So people who kind of aren't really sort of overly focused on personal training. And so it took me 3 months to get my first clients, and it was a group of women, and it was four of them, and they would come in, they would train together all at the same time. So what we would do is we would start off doing a circuit, and then we would go off and do some weight training where I would pair them off and get them doing supersets, which is essentially two exercises back to back, and then get the two pairs to swap thereafter. Um, so yeah, they were my first clients, and it took a bit of time, but the thing is, I did I was loving it. I did. I really loved that, even in spite of kind of not having many clients. Well, only sort of a group of women inside the first 2 months. Um, yeah, I didn't care, and I think if you're actually to go back and look at some of my earlier content on Facebook, on Instagram, and things like that, I think you'll see that whilst I speak very, very differently because the body coach was my hero back in the day, I spoke a lot like him. So whilst I spoke very, very differently compared to what I speak now, I think you'll still notice that passion I had for coaching and nutrition and exercise still very much coming through in what I was saying on my posts and how I showed up on social media. So from day one as a coach to now, I hope that that's kind of never been a question as to how passionate I am about this. Um, so kind of the journey at David Lloyd, I was there for I would have been there for about 3 years. Business started to pick up. Um, and then eventually it got to a point where within my business I needed a change within the business model that I was working within, and through kind of, I guess, no fault of anyone's, my journey at David Lloyd came to an end. And I seen myself join another gym called DW, and DW was the best gym ever. It was the best gym ever. Now, for anyone who's listened to this who was a member of DW, specifically in Dundee, or who has been a member of DW elsewhere, you might be thinking, oh, well, what was kind of, it was just a gym, what was so special about it? And like, I'll agree with you in that from an equipment perspective, it was good. It was your standard commercial gym. There was nothing particularly flashy about it, but what made it was the people. And the family. Like I will go as far as saying that they felt like family to me. They were just they were amazing. I literally I cannot use any other word to describe them. They were amazing. They were perfect. They were phenomenal. They were so good to be around. That when you step through the door to leaving at night, it was just great. And at this point in my business, I think it must have been about 5 or 6 years into it, 4, 5, 6 years. I can't quite remember. And into my career as a coach, you're you're a lot more particular about where you spend time or how you spend time, because time is money in business. And the time that I spent in the gym, without it not always being financially fruitful, was always fruitful in the sense that the people made it that. They made it such an amazing place to be, that whether financially fruitful or not, it was always mentally fruitful. It was always emotionally fruitful. It was always physically fruitful, because you were able to exercise and train and all these sorts of stuff. But being around those people, you you were always gaining something from being in DW, or at least that's how I felt. And I know that that's, for anyone who worked there, that's how they felt as well. It was such an amazing place to be. And I really felt at home there. And then COVID happened, and COVID. Some of you might not even have said that word since since sort of what, 2019, 2020, 21 years. But it was such a big part of our lives at the time that it literally felt like, looking back on it now in retrospect, it feels like an entirely different world. It's an entirely different life altogether. And yeah, COVID hit. So it meant that DW was no longer open. It meant that life had essentially stopped. It did. It stopped for so many people, for billions of people, because life just wasn't working the way that it was before. And I think, well, it did. It had so many people kind of having to think out of the box, change things, particularly personal trainers and coaches, that so many businesses didn't survive COVID because they couldn't. How could they? Life wasn't the same. We didn't trade the same. We didn't exchange services the same. It was different. It was an entirely different life. So a lot of us had the rug pulled out from underneath us. DW closed, and so we had to change things. We had to move things around. We had to pivot, Ross Geller style. Pivot. Friends is amazing. For anyone who doesn't think Friends is amazing, Friends is fucking phenomenal. All right, and that's where my mum and dad, again, still living at home with mum and dad, actually let me build a gym in the driveway. And for anyone who remembers Fitness First, remember the chain of gyms, Fitness First? We called the gym in my driveway Flintness First, which, again, for those of you who don't know, TFG, the F in TFG stands for Flintness. So we called it Fitness First. So we were getting creative with it. We were getting good with it. And I actually invested a lot of money in that stuff. I spent nearly £1,000 on getting equipment to build that driveway gym. We had a gazebo put over. We even had like a cleaning station. We even had masks available for anyone who wanted to wear masks. We had a rug put down with bench put in, cables put in. It it was quite the it was quite the setup. And to be honest, kind of when life started to get back to normal, I don't know. I might speak for a lot of people here, but I kind of didn't really want it to. I was quite proud of what I built, and I was quite proud of where I'd got it to, because again, I was always wanting to lead with my best foot forward. And yeah, like, I'm not gonna lie, COVID was a very sort of mixed bag for me, in that I had my struggles. I had to think outside the box and get things going, and it put a lot of strain on a lot of relationships. And but once I'd kind of managed that and started to come out of that, that's when creatively things started to really work for me again, and that's when Fitness First came around. So kind of by the time life went back to normal with everything, I wasn't. Yeah, it was great. The gyms and stuff were open again, but I was happy. I would go as far as saying that I was happy. I was happy at that point after a long time during COVID, particularly at the start, really, really struggling mentally, really, really struggling emotionally. Like, I know so many people were. And again, like I said at the start, that's when I made that video on Instagram talking about my mental health and how I felt at that time, and the strain that was putting on me. And should anyone want to see that or is intrigued by that, please, either you can scroll back or drop me a message. I can send you it, because I still think, whilst at the time I, I was just tired. I was just tired, and I was just looking for an outlet. To be honest, I was just looking for a reason to lift the lid on how I was feeling. And I know that it resonated with so many people. So if that's something that you're interested in and would like to see, because that's how you're feeling, then please never hesitate to message me, never hesitate to reach out. I'm always only ever just a message away. Because if I can share and not even necessarily share, but just have an ear to bend, because I know what it's like having that pressure build up, and having that, or an outlet of some form to release some of that pressure, is game changing. So yeah, should that be something that you want to see, please honestly do not hesitate to ask me. I can send you that. But we kind of fast forward to gyms opening up again. Life goes back to normal, as it were. It still took a long time after that. I think, economically speaking, we're still recovering a lot from COVID. But yeah, life for the most part kind of goes back to normal. So by this point, I'm working in a different gym, because sadly DW didn't actually make it through COVID. It was one of the businesses that didn't, and I think that was part and parcel why I felt a lot of the way that I felt at the time, because I such a strong such a strong outlet, such a strong foundation of my life had been taken away. And so that was hard. That took its toll. But again, having to pivot again, and find somewhere else to take my business. So I find a new gym to work out of, Skyax, family run gym, great gym, still there to this day. Um, Business is going good. I'm helping a lot of people, but there was always that but, there was always that asterisk next to my business, next to my coaching, where again I was getting caught up in these visions. I was getting caught up in these feelings of grandeur, that TFG and my coaching could be something so much bigger than it ever was. Um, and so 2 years ago, it'll be coming up for 2 years ago, I joined a business mentorship, which I'm no longer a part of, where that I joined that I joined because I had these visions and I had these thoughts of where I could take my business and where I could take something that I knew was impacting people positively, where where I was where I was changing people's lives for the better. And it was on the cusp. It was on the periphery of something. I can see it. It's, to this day, like it's literally single handedly what drives me, because that impact that I have on people's lives and the ability that I have to be able to help people, and the messages that I get, and the energy that's inside the TFG team and the things that we talk about, it's infectious. It's literally what drives me in life. And this business mentorship I joined because I needed help realizing that. Excuse me. However, at the time of when I joined the business mentorship, there was a lot of things going on in life as well. Kim and me, who's my girlfriend, were exploring different sort of. We knew that we were going to need to move house soon. Kim at the time, and still is to this day, had left her job because she was unwell as a result of what we suspect to be endometriosis. But Kim also has rheumatoid arthritis. So with her having rheumatoid arthritis, things things don't work the way things don't work the way that we would want them to. And so yeah, when I joined that, sorry everyone, there might be a little bit of a gap here. It might have sounded like I was talking about something and I completely started talking about something else. The doorbell went and it completely threw me off, and I actually thought I'd locked Kim out, but I hadn't. So I'm going to try and pick up sort of where I left off. I believe I was speaking about joining the business mentorship. I was talking about Kim's health at the time, and so yeah, I'm gonna kind of crack on with that. So yeah, there were Kim's health. She wasn't working. I think again we were looking for sort of somewhere to live at that moment in time. You're combining that with a lot of the stress that I felt because I'd previously sort of I'd gone for mortgages before on homes and I'd been knocked back pretty harshly, um, because it was just me at the time of going for them. Again, Kim's not working, so she's not bringing in any money. And then my 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 coaching, whilst financially doing okay, wasn't quite clearly doing as financially well as I needed it to do in order for us to get a mortgage. So when I joined this business mentorship, it was coming off the back of a quite a desperate state of mind, shall we say. My back was against it. Um, and so being in that business mentorship for 18 months, I had spent quite a lot of money on it. I had spent a lot of money on investing in what they were teaching me, but I was investing it because I believed that it had to work. It had to. And in the 18 months that I was a part of it, it was it was single-handedly one of the best and worst things I could have ever done. And whilst I'd met a lot of amazing people along the way, there were a lot of things that I had done from a business perspective with the aim of earning money that compromised a lot of what I had believed and a lot of my values as a person, as a human being, as a coach, fundamentally. Because if it's not obvious by now at this point in this podcast or even online, if you've followed me for a time, I've I'm deeply passionate about helping people. I've always wanted to help people. I've always wanted to help take their pain away. I've always wanted to help them not feel uncomfortable anymore. I've always wanted to help them feel confident. I've always helped them wanted to feel sure in themselves. I've always wanted them to to believe in themselves in the way that I believe people can be and what they have to offer. And so whilst this business mentorship in particular advocated for that, they advocated that we try to show that off and sell that as often as we possibly can. And it became a numbers game at that point. It became less about who I was trying to help and more about, well, how many boxes can I tick to try and get people buying from me? How many boxes can I tick to get people investing in my business? And and for a time, because again, if it's not been clear and obvious up until this point, that when I set my mind to something, I go, and when I convince myself of something, I go, irrespective of everything else. If it makes sense to me, which at that time my back was against it, I had to step up. I was the only one earning money. Business wise, I had these visions of grandeur, etc., etc. Kim and me were effectively going to be homeless. Kim was massively unwell as well. I was against, and I was stuck between a rock and a hard place where I felt like I had to do a lot of the carrying of the weight. I had to do a lot of what this business mentorship were telling me, in spite of how I felt about it, because I seen it work. I seen other coaches in very similar positions to me do what they were asking or do what they were being asked, and it worked for them. And so I had visual proof of that as well. That if I just play this game, if I just do what it is that they're telling me to do, it's going to work out. It's going to pay off. And I'm going to be very, very specific here, because there might be people listening to this who are thinking, well, yeah, I was sort of at the brunt of that. I was messaging a lot of people, and I was sending out a lot more messages than what I was comfortable with doing, to the point where I didn't feel anything towards it anymore, because it was just it was just a numbers game. It was just well, how many times can I do this before it works and it pays off for me? And there was a lot of, I had to bite the bullet with it until one day I didn't. Until one day I sent the wrong type of message to the wrong person, and it changed everything for me. And it wasn't just one person I'd sent it to. I'd sent it to a multitude of different people, and I spent that entire day groveling and apologizing for something that I did. I did that. It was me that sent the message. It wasn't, no one held a gun to my head and said, Sam, you need to send these messages. But I was I was working from a place of desperation almost, and instead of trying to deliver and and promote my business from a place of authenticity and from where I place my values as a human being, I was doing it based on what this business mentorship was telling me was the best way to do that. And that didn't align with me, and it took me a hell of a fucking long time to realize that. And I sent the wrong message to the wrong people, and I was wrong. And I spent a lot of that day apologizing and being sorry that it was never my intention for it to be received the wrong way. Because some people might argue, well, if the shoe fits, as it were. No, the wording of the message was, it was wrong. I was wrong in that situation, and I'm so very, very fucking sorry that happened. And it took me a long time to actually get over that because well, the reason again, I've said it so many times, the reason I became a coach was because I wanted to help people. I've always wanted to help people. So to know that I was bothering people, to know that I was making people feel uncomfortable, to know that I was not helping the way that I'd always wanted to was like those messages that I got, as horrible was they as they were the turning point, were another turning point for me where I had to pivot again and change what it was that I was doing, because it essentially slapped me back into me, because I started to ask a hell of a lot of fucking questions after that point. I of course, again, things were tough financially. Kim and me were again still thinking about having to find somewhere else to live, etc., etc. And it was a very very tough time, and emotionally and mentally, I was going through a hell of a fucking lot at that time. I actually went back to therapy, and again, this was something that I communicated and shared with on my socials. And this thing specifically with the messages and all that sort of stuff was something that I spoke about with my therapist, because it rocked me so fucking hard and dented my confidence so fucking hard that I had to talk about it, because again, I never got into coaching. I never got into coaching to earn money. It's never been about money. But at that point in time in my life, I needed money. I needed a lot of money to help Kim and me get to the next stage of our life. But in doing that, I was pissing a hell of a lot of people off, and I was doing it the wrong way, and lost a lot of myself along that 18-month journey that I was in that business mentorship. And I'm sorry if you were someone I ever sent a message to and I made you feel a certain kind of way. I am sorry, because that was never my aim. It was never my intention. And I spent a long time thinking about it. It rocked my confidence. I stopped making content. I was still showing up for the team, obviously, but this was something that was very firm and strong at the back of my mind. I was having existential questions about life, and is this really for me? Am I doing the right thing? What's what we're going to do next? All those sorts of questions. And it kind of didn't really stop there either, because sort of when we got into the winter, which is always a little bit of a sticky point for, I think, most coaches and PTs, where people are thinking about Christmas, how they're going to afford it, etc. I had a couple of drop offs. Again, Kim and me were sort of no further forward with the house. She still wasn't working. Um, we were stuck. We were we were stuck, and because I was no further forward financially, even being part of this business mentorship, and people were falling out the back end with wanting to save for Christmas and stuff like that. I remember standing in the kitchen of our old house with Kim, roaring and crying, basically, and just feeling like the biggest failure in the world, and feeling like I'd let her down. And I'm pretty much seriously talking about. I said to Kim, I went, Kim, if I have another winter like this in coach, I can't do this anymore. Mentally and emotionally, I can't do this anymore. I love what I do. I love helping people, but I'm going to need to play this safe if we're going to get more of what we need in life. I'm going to need to get I don't know, a 9 to 5 career, and something safe, something secure that brings money in, that lets us get the mortgage, that lets us have that safe security. And that was honestly a serious question I had with Kim, and Kim will tell you that's exactly what I said. And in that moment, I was seriously contemplating giving up coaching, giving up the one thing that I loved doing, no matter what, that combined the two things that I was talking about, of my love of fitness and health and nutrition and all that sort of stuff, and getting to help people. The one thing that my mum and dad helped pay for and support me through, the one thing that I'd spent sort of, well, up until that point, 8 years trying to build and develop and put a lot of effort into, and the one thing that I live for, to be fair, to be honest, the one thing that I can only see myself doing in this life is helping people, and helping people in the capacity that I get to help people. And I lost that. I lost that vision, and I lost that. I lost that. Well, yeah, I lost that vision. I lost that perspective, I suppose, is kind of what I'm trying to say, in that it became very much, right, well, it's a business and need to grow a business and make it financial and all that sort of stuff. And yes, whilst I can appreciate why thinking like that would help you make more money, it doesn't align with who I am as a person. It never has. Like, never in my entire life have I ever been business minded and business focused. Whilst I've obviously had to develop an element of that to to own a business and run a business, I never want it to be to the degree that I did it during that 18 months I was part of that business mentorship. I don't want that. I don't want that. And if the trade offs that I make way less money, then fuck it. Fuck it. I don't give a fuck. Really don't care. Because if I get to show up and do what I do in the way that I do it now, as I am right now, every single day, I'll trade it all. I'll trade it all. I'm not giving up. I'll never give it up. It's going to be hard. Things are hard. Life is always hard. It will always throw you curveballs, but I'm committed. And I guess kind of that's sort of the spin that I want to put on it for you guys. Is that if there something that you're thinking in your mind that you know makes your life better, or that you know that you live for, that if you committed to or stuck to, that it would make your life better, then no matter what, please just hold on to it, give it everything you've got, because if that thing gives you life and that thing gives you energy, then in my opinion, it doesn't matter how hard things get, because that one thing that gives you life and gives you that energy, if you give that up, what's the point? Genuinely, what's the point? And yeah, that's kind of, I suppose, the educational spin that I wanted to put on it, that I talked about at the start, that I would try and align this with something helpful that you could use for your weight loss or your exercise or your nutrition or your mindset or anything else. But if there's, again, I suppose the final note I would want to put on that is that if there's something that you're committed to, or something that you love and something that you're passionate about, please, whatever life throws at you, do not give that up. Do not let it go, because, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what life would be like without it. I, without being dramatic, I don't know if it would be worth it, to be fair. Um, and that's kind of very much where I was at with my coaching. I thought things had got that bad for me that the thing that I took a risk on trying to make it better didn't work, combined with the fact that I was still very much struggling, maybe even more so than I was before I joined the business mentorship, had me literally in a fucking chokehold, making me question whether or not coaching was something that I could continue. And I've gone round and round and round again with it. I've since been going to therapy still, working through a lot of things, but from a very early stage, a lot of people have always sort of believed in me, and that I've applied myself a certain way. I can do pretty much whatever I want. Mum had the medium saying, "I see your son speaking in front of hundreds of people." Playground assistant saying, "Remember me when you're famous." My teacher pairing me up with Connor at primary school, and and being great at sports when in second year athletics and all these sorts of things. Like there are a lot of I have a lot of memories in my head of moments that when you join them all together are are painting a map to where I am right now. And I'm 32. Like I'm 32. My life is not over. It's not done by no means. But they're only telling me that there's more of those things. There's more of those little road marks to come, and that's kind of it gives me energy, it gives me life, and it gives me motivation to help more people. Like outside the TFG team, and obviously inside the TFG team, we live off that energy, and we're ambitious that way, and we're committed that way. And if you have something like that in your life, hold on to it, because without it, there's there's a lot of things out there in life that are designed to keep you down, that are designed to hold you in a place that you don't want to be, and so don't don't let go of that. But that was the story about how I nearly gave up coaching, and to put it in the words of Jordan Belfort, I ain't fucking leaving. I'm not fucking leaving. I'm not. I'm not. I can't. I just. There's nothing. There's nothing else. I'd be good at a lot of things. Yeah, I would be good at a lot of things. Would I be as passionate about anything else? No. Nah. And life's way too short not to be passionate about something. So yeah. Thank you very much for listening to this, everyone. I really hope you've kind of stuck until the end. If you have absolutely anything that you'd like to say, anything you'd like to ask me about, please do not hesitate to ask me. I hope I was as detailed as I could be. I hope that it kind of you were able to sort of better understand or see where I've come through and what I've navigated through life. I feel like I didn't go in anywhere near as much depth as I could about mental health and feeling suicidal and all these sorts of things. But these are things that I've spoke about endless amounts of over over the last sort of 10 years or so being on social media. Yeah, there's absolutely. I hope I went into as much depth as I possibly could about kind of where I started. I was a personal trainer, what life was like for me at an early age, and all these sorts of things. And yeah, most importantly, I hope you all better understand, if you don't already, why I do what it is that I do and why I show up the way that I do for for people who are committed to wanting better for themselves. I'll never stop. I can't. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. If you want to follow me on social media, please follow the links down below. If you're new to this, or if you've known me for a while, you want to drop me a message, please honestly do not hesitate to drop me a message. And I look forward to helping so many more of you.